Not 2 months ago, somebody commented on one of our podcasts on YouTube that was about sort of building communities, and it was like, "Man, I wish there was a community I could go to where people building side hustles could hang out." And I was like, I don't. Maybe it does exist. If it doesn't, like, have you considered spinning something like that up? Couple other people commented. One thing led to another. A little bit of internet lurking later. Those few folks were hanging out. Now they have a thriving community going on Discord. They're launching a podcast, all this stuff just from like having the courage to post a comment and be like, hey, are there any other weirdos here like me that are struggling with the same thing that I am? Made the decision not to lurk, and now they're making friends. So, talked with Justin. He's joining us today to just kind of like pick his brain. Was he born to be a community builder? What's different about him than you that led to him doing this thing when it can be really hard to build up the courage to be like, hey, I'm an adult and I see you're an adult that's similar. Do you want to be friends? I know this is weird. I shouldn't write that message. No. I don't want to put myself out there. Maybe Justin's different. We're going to talk to him today to find out. So come on in. Let's get a little bit uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable. Let's hear from him about how he like spun up an itty bitty little baby community for side hustle firm runners. And it might just inspire you to do something similar. Okay, Justin, thank you for being here. For folks who don't know you, which is probably most people, right? Like, what is the 30-second intro to Justin before we get into more of the meat and potatoes?
So I'm a non-traditional CPA. My origin story is that I used to sell things outside and I wanted to come inside, so I changed careers. And I'm raising a family while building a firm on the side. And I happened to accidentally stumble into a really great group of people who are a lot like me.
Good for you, dude. I think there's a lot of folks that listen to this that are doing the young family want to build their own thing. It was kind of my thing. Like, that's what ultimately motivated me to get out of my firm. Was I had a bunch of kids I want to spend more time with, and I'm like, I think I'm going to do something different. But how we first got connected, I think you first commented on a YouTube video and you were like, this is me not lurking anymore.
Yep, that's how it started.
The gist of it. So the origin story, if folks haven't caught it on past episodes, basically a few folks started talking in the comments around like, I'm starting a side hustle thing and it would be great to find others. And then just in the comments there, several other people responded, and then you organized something amongst yourselves, right?
Yeah, so there was a handful of other folks who commented on the same YouTube video, and luckily they had enough identifiable information in their YouTube handle that I was able to Google them, track them down on LinkedIn, and I sent them messages, and it's like, I have no idea if you're the actual person that I'm looking for. If you're not, this is going to be really weird.
If you're a different Spicy Boy 87.
Yeah. And so it's like, even if you are, this is probably still weird because I found you. But that's how it started.
Wow. Yeah, because several of you, like, did you hop on a Zoom or something to start?
We started in this really disgusting email thread, but it started off internet thread, and then we moved to Discord because somebody smarter than me joined the group and said, there's a cleaner way to do this. And then a few of us, we have hopped on Zoom to actually put faces to the names, but it's been just kind of spiraling. Maybe out of control is the right terminology, but in a fun way.
Yeah, so the common thread is it's all folks that are side hustling in some capacity, right?
Yeah, so all of us who joined the group originally, we're side hustle firms. Some of us work in public accounting as our day job, and then we wanted to do our own thing with our own unique spin. And some of us worked in industry and found that it's kind of boring because there's a lot of free time, and so they started their own thing, but we're all side hustle firms. And a surprising number of us are non-traditional CPAs, came to the career a little later in life.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I would wager a bet that for those of us that came later in life, we were intentionally drawn to the career, and we've seen other ways that businesses get ran. For me, I was in sales for a decade, and I knew that there was a different way to do it than what I was experiencing when I first got into the firm that I started at. And I thought, okay, sure, they know more about accounting than I do because I'm a 30-year-old intern, but there's a different way to run this. And I think that maybe people drawn in later in life have a little more of an entrepreneurial drive. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, or maybe it grinds their gears a little more to see some of the traps that traditional firms fall into. We talked about this a bit before we hit record, but what was your background? What were you doing before you got to accounting firm stuff, and what ultimately made you be like, okay, I need to start my own thing?
So I started in sales, and I really enjoyed that, which is unique for somebody who lands in an accounting firm.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the conversation in sales, that tension as you're trying to find common ground. But I began to work up through management in the company that I was in. And as I got more experience with the back end of business and the office type of life, I began to realize that I was having a lot of fun interpreting the numbers, interpreting the data, and figuring out, okay, well, if we move things in this direction as far as what we're offering for sales, we have better margin here, we have better return there, and kind of that puzzle, that numbers game became a lot of fun for me. And when I realized I wanted to go inside, I thought, well, accounting seems like a pretty good fit.
Yeah.
So that's where I came from.
Interesting. Do you enjoy doing sales in an accounting firm?
Yeah. So I thought I would enjoy being out of the sales role because it's decently high stress, but it didn't take very long for me to begin to miss it. And I took the opportunity at my first couple of traditional firms to try and work my way into a bit of a client relationship and sales position. And it wasn't necessarily appreciated by the powers that be. But what I was able to do is start saying, hey, I got them to agree to this higher level of service. And then the partner might be like, that's great, but that's not something we do. Well, but we can figure it out. That was kind of always my thing is everything is figure outable. And so if we're already doing X and Y, it's not a lot of work to package Z along with it.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you think the partners, was it like you were kind of trotting on their territory? It was the traditional setup where they would normally have they would drive the discussion around the scope of an engagement and were maybe threatened by that?
I think that could have been part of it. There's a lot of structure and hierarchy and siloing in some of these smaller firms where, well, you got to work your way up. You have to start at the infant level, and you don't get to do sales until until it really affects your pocketbook at the partner level. And I've always been of the opinion to let people do the things that are most fun for them because they'll be the best at it. And they ended up appreciating the fact that I was able to increase the average ticket for some of the different things that we were doing, or at least repackage the way things were presented. So it looked like it really felt to the client like we were delivering a whole lot more because I took an extra 30 minutes to put together an analysis that I presented to them along with the audit package.
It was maybe a month ago, I started totally geeking out on like old school sales stuff, like Zig Ziglar type of stuff.
Oh, I love Zig.
And that was the first time I heard the framing of like, what a gift it is to be a salesperson because you have something incredible that can improve these people's lives. And I think where we get sick of sales is when that's not the case or is taken too far, or the thing that they're selling, is really, really actually not that compelling. It's just your job to sell. Is there any like, what's maybe your favorite literature or audiobook, or like what is your go-to for folks that maybe need to get their head around sales a little better?
Anything by Zig Ziglar. But then another really great classic sales teacher is Brian Tracy, and he has a wonderful, easy read called The Psychology of Selling or The Psychology of Sales. It's a quick read, and Brian Tracy, he really approaches it with the only reason to sell anything is you can make their life better. And you have an obligation. If you have value you can deliver, you have an obligation to your community, to the world at large, to make the world better by selling. And so Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, both fantastic resources to help reframe from, I don't like sales and I don't want to be salesy, to, wait, that's an honorable way that I serve my clients.
This episode is sponsored in part by Cloud Accountant Staffing. Hey, you run a tax firm, you struggle to find good tax talent? Yes, yes, you do. Let me tell you, the world's getting smaller every day, and Cloud Accountant Staffing will help you find mega talented accountants in the Philippines who already have tax experience. Actually, hang on. How's this sound? 2 years tax experience using Intuit Pro Connect or Pro Connect user. Sounds good, right? Before that, they did audit. Bless their hearts for getting out of there. Experience with RC reports, Core V tax planning, and last actually oversaw a team of other preparers. It's the type of resume you would see where if you saw it from like a stateside person, you'd be like the cut of this person's jib. Man, you'd be on it like moss on a Mississippi tree stump, and just because that resume isn't from someone in the States doesn't mean they can't contribute. Now, are there other hurdles that come with hiring people offshore? Disclosures, stuff like that. Maybe if you haven't run a distributed team before, you're thinking, how do I manage people that aren't like right under my thumb or in my office? For sure, things to learn. But you know who's gonna be really good at helping you with that? A company who's done it with a bunch of other firms. So stop trying to reinvent the wheel and figure it all out yourself. Hop on a call with Cloud Accountant Staffing. Tell them what you're looking for. They're gonna cut loose their recruitments to find talented applicants. And you'll only make a hire if you find somebody you love. Doesn't hurt to start the process just to learn, if for nothing else. To check out Cloud Accountant Staffing, there's a link down in the show notes. Today's episode is sponsored in part by LiveFlow. Why run a big old fancy reporting suite when a spreadsheet will do? Arguably, the spreadsheet, it's your natural habitat. No need to learn a new platform to get a PhD in how to use some big new FP&A complicated thing, when you can just plug your accounting ledger data straight into a spreadsheet. And if you've ever actually pushed reporting on clients, maybe your experience is different. I can tell you in my experience, it is enough of a fist fight to just get them to open the email to look at an attached PDF, let alone like train them on a whole new platform, get them logging into a different place. But a spreadsheet you can point back to every single month, a spreadsheet they can bookmark, it's got all the information that they need, some that's static, some that updates on an ongoing basis. LiveFlow can do that for you, and it's super quick and easy to set up. Integrates now with QBO, with Xero, with Excel, with Google Sheets. I see you, hipster accountant. Create that little report once and keep it syncing like forever. And you got one place for the client to come back to, a spreadsheet. Super easy to understand, to change. Even if it's just like pulling net income across all their different entities. It'll do consolidations. So even if it's like, say, a tax planning thing, we got to roll up how much money have they made this year so far, and is that on track with maybe how we projected taxable income would be looking this year? Bunch of different things that you can do with that from the comfort of your own home. A spreadsheet, P.O. Box A1, okay? And if that's your happy place, check out LiveFlow. Link in the show notes. I got to circle back to something you said earlier that when you're talking about your relationship with partners that I could relate to. The notion that like, oh yeah, it's easy to just do that one more thing. Like it's not a big deal if we just do like this one extra carve out for this one client sort of thing, right? Like what is your relationship to that these days? Because obviously that can be a trap. But then on the other side, when you're starting out your firm, like, man, you're doing just about anything for anybody that'll put like food on the table, right? So how have you grappled with that in the sales process right now? Or is it just like I'm early enough to where I'm like, I'm gonna do what they need, and then maybe we retract from there, but at least for now we're just gonna do what they'll pay us to do.
That's a fantastic question. So yeah, there's definitely a trap there, and I'll be fast to admit that I've already fallen into that trap a little bit with my own side hustle.
Yeah.
Because there is such a temptation to go off path because they're willing to pay. Or the trap that I fell into was, okay, this is not really my target business. This is not the type of business that I want to serve, but I really like the people. And that was a trap that I fell into recently, and I'm trying to figure out how to dig my way out of it. But how to keep that in mind when I'm building this, I think of it as I'm walking on a designated path that I put in front of me, and if I can easily reach out and pull something in, then I guess I'm okay kind of carving that out. But if I have to change direction, I need to set the boundaries for myself where that's off limits. If it's a matter of, oh, they want the income statement to show year to date compared to last year, and then a % variance column, that's easy.
Yeah.
I can just reach out and grab that without changing direction. But if they want something that causes me to have to, get off the path that I set, I need to have the strength and courage to set that boundary.
Okay, so to bring this back to creeping on internet strangers, you are now. I mean, I don't think you identify as this, but you are now, a community builder to some degree. You've created a space where people come and hang out, and we will link that down in the show notes if there are other side hustlers that want to get in on that. So this started as like an innocent post on a YouTube comment. I can't imagine that at this stage you're like, yes, I found my calling is to create a safe space for other side hustlers. Like, how do you feel about this? Does it feel like it's been like thrust upon you, or I don't know, what's your relationship to whatever this is now?
So I like that the callback to it was creeping on internet strangers.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for setting the tone there.
That's how all great things start, right?
Somebody's either brave enough or dumb enough to creep on internet strangers.
Yes.
Yep. So I really enjoy it. When I was growing up, everybody had their dream job of what they wanted to do as a kid. And I was convinced that I was going to grow up to be a motivational speaker. I have no idea why that was a thought, but I just thought that sounded like the most fun I could possibly have, getting other people to really believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And being a part of this community and kind of starting this thing up and encouraging and sharing all of my failures and lessons with other people, to me, it's been a lot of fun. If I could do that all day, I certainly would, but accounting work does need done sometime.
You're saying that to a guy that started an accounting community that became its own business and content and the kind of silliness we do on this podcast. Is that, does that motivational speaker still live inside of you somewhere where you're like, yeah, that actually would be fun?
Oh yeah. I've always enjoyed public speaking. Again, not something that you hear from a stereotypical accountant, but I've always enjoyed public speaking and telling stories. In fact, so the name of my side hustle firm is Adventure Accounting, because I love to tell great stories of adventure, and I think that those stories are all around us, and somebody has to tell them. And so I look at a lot of the people that are in this Discord group that I started, and I've been doing some podcast interviews with them, and they don't realize it at first, but as they talk, I hear the incredible story that they have, and having the opportunity to make a platform for that so far has been a whole lot of fun.
Man, that's there's so much of that I can relate to. And like when we think about how accountants learn and how like we love hearing from other accountants, and like we've had enough software people kind of tell us how to do this or that, like finding people in our space that have skills to teach us, like that's gold. But like my shtick is probably, I can make funny things, I can be convincing, and I also more or less know how to run accounting firms, but I'm far from like the leading expert. And that led to like, let's make videos and podcasts and silly things. You are like, I have this passion for storytelling, and you have you've got more riz than most accountants do. And like most accountants are not going to be excited about doing sales and that sort of thing, right? But like you mentioned the podcast, like the notion of marrying this sort of like storytelling enthusiasm and the kind of motivational side with like, the reality is starting an accounting firm it's very much a motivation thing. It's a self-belief thing. I love that you've sort of married those two things. I think that's how, I don't know, unique new things come to be, is like a kind of a unique combination of skill sets. You tease the podcast. You're getting the side hustlers in this little channel to like come and chat with you, and then you're going to put it out on a podcast feed at some point?
Yeah, so I actually uploaded our very first conversation to YouTube today, and I'm the first to admit that I'm technologically behind. I love tech, but I feel so busy that I never learned the newest stuff. And the newest stuff being things that started in like 2010. So that's how far behind I am.
Too true.
And several of the people in the Discord, I keep pointing this way for the Discord group as if it's a physical location.
It's right there in your computer machine. Yep.
Right there. But several of the people in the Discord group, when I mentioned the idea, hey, I've always wanted to start a podcast, and I think that tracking your guys' journey from nothing to building a firm in your image, I think that'd be a compelling story. What do you guys think? And a number of them jumped at the opportunity. But yeah, so several of them jumped at the idea of being on a podcast. And the whole goal of it is, I wish that there were a group of people who were 2 weeks ahead of me starting a firm, and I could listen to them get their first client. So like I said, we have some people in our group who they've just recently gone full-time, and some people in our group who don't even have their first client, but they're setting the foundations. They have they're working on their systems and processes. So everything in between. And so if somebody finds this podcast and they say, man, I'd love to start a firm, but all of these people are so far ahead of me, they can go back to one of these first episodes and say, wait a second, this guy's just as much of a loser as I am. I can start with him. And then and the goal is to do updates on a regular basis. And so this guy goes from 0 clients to now he's got his first one. And how did he do it? How did you navigate that process? That way listeners, if they want to start a firm, they can actually grow along with the podcast.
Yeah. What do you say the pod was called? This guy's as much, what do you say, as dumb as I am?
That's about the right title for it. Watch us make mistakes. No, so I tried to come up with a creative name, and then I thought, well, how is somebody going to find us? And I thought, oh, you know what? I'll just name it New Firm Owners. It's as simple as it can be. And if there's a new firm owner looking for a podcast, the chances of finding that one are pretty good.
Yeah.
Not creative, but a solid name nonetheless.
Man, I'm so jealous of like the growing number of people that are building these resources that just didn't exist 5 years ago, or like you had to go to like a consulting group or some weird gatekeep thing like this. Like, to be clear, how many people are in the Discord server now?
So as of this morning, I think there were 23.
Wow, 23?
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. So this is just a bunch of weirdos hanging out in the Discord server. Like, this is, and what I hope people hear is this is a space that, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, like a few people were like, I wish this existed. And it now exists because they willed it into existence. And it's not impressive, but like, it's totally one of those things where who knows, like you could all get hauled off to jail next week, or in a few years, it could be, 1,000 people that are like sharing their journey of building a firm. But people only see it and they find it when it's the train's so far down the tracks that they're like, well, that's not me. I'm not a professional motivational speaker like Justin is. Or like, these are like the things they always say when they look at me, when it's like, dude, if you want that thing to exist, like, be the one to make it. Like, that's such a great place to be. And then you, Justin, are in the unique position to get to steal everybody else's ideas because you're having these conversations and like you're growing as much as anybody else along the way because you get to be at the center of like what you're learning from everybody else, which I just think is so cool. So I don't know, to go back to like your frame of mind when you're like, I'm going to post a comment today for the first time. And I don't particularly know what it's going to lead to, if anything, probably nothing. Like, what was your frame of mind then that maybe got you over the hump where somebody hearing that today is like, man, this would be super useful for like new moms or like whatever your own spin is on that? Like, what was that frame of mind when you first started posting? And I guess what would you want those people to hear?
So my frame of mind, I forget if we mentioned this while we were recording or if it's something I said early on before we started recording, but my frame of mind is I've done enough stupid things and looked like a fool enough that I guess I'm just okay with that now.
Yeah.
And so if I throw something out into the ether, into the universe, and it does not come back, then whatever. I'm just a faceless YouTube handle. And so if it doesn't work out, then there's not a whole lot of loss.
Yeah.
But the downside's pretty low. But the upside is I find one more weirdo out there, and then my wife doesn't have to hear me talk about building a CPA firm all the time. I can talk to this other weirdo. And the upside's huge, the downside's minimal. And so just roll the dice. It's worth it.
Isn't it funny how we get stuck on the downside of like a social media or a YouTube post, comment or something? Like we're on this little rock spinning around in the universe, and you're like, no, if I post this right now, this could lead to some sort of ruin that I'm not anticipating. Today's episode is sponsored in part by TeamUp. How do you hire people that aren't mediocre? How do you avoid just attracting like the middle of that normal distribution, right? We want exceptional people. Well, the answer is recruiting. Is framing your firm and your role as, here's what we do. Like we have something to say, we're opinionated on the right way to do this stuff, and being specific enough to attract an exceptional person who that specific role resonates with. And it is easier said than done. And not unlike how we can attract very general clients, if we don't get specific about this and we don't do the work of recruiting, you can end up with generic results. Not to be mean about this or inhuman, but without putting in the effort, it's just gonna be less likely that you find those exceptional people, right? Just how many people should you be going through? According to TeamUp, you ought to be looking at inviting between 200 and 300 people to apply, getting between 50 and 75 completed applications, getting between 10 and 20 people to complete kind of an introductory test, like establishing a technical bar, do 5 to 10 interviews, and end up with 2 to 3 fantastic candidates. Sound like a lot of work? It is. And that's why partnering with somebody to help you with this will actually increase the likelihood that you get really high quality hires. So TeamUp, they'll help you find really talented accountants in the Philippines. Not just like pulling in whoever's walking by, but like doing outbound. Like they have a team of recruiters that are putting a bunch of legwork into this to increase the likelihood that you actually get really, really good people. Learn more about TeamUp. Check out a link down in the show notes. Today's episode sponsored in part by CoreV. I can tell you when it came to selling tax planning, as we called it, back in my day, it wasn't tax advisory. When it came to selling that to clients, the tools that I had to do that work was just a regular plain old tax software, or BNA, which is just the most visually painful program you've ever used. And to present that to a client, to be like, look at this smart stuff I've done, I couldn't get my head around that. I think most of us can't. CoreV, on the other hand, super good at this. It's basically, they have like, they say over 1,500 tax strategies. So they will help you identify strategies for clients. But even as you hear that, if you're a taxpayer, you're like, what's a strategy? Do I really trust that? Here's the thing, is unless we dress it up, unless we can call those things out that we are capturing for our clients, then they don't know the value we are realizing for them. And it may be table stakes for you, but does the client know that? They sure don't. And if you never tell them that thing that you did for them, they're not gonna value you. But I know, virtue signaling, I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time beating my chest about the helpful things I did. Honestly, that's what CoreV's great for. Tax advisory visualizations that show all the things you've done for them, how much money you saved them, even rolling year-over-year savings, stuff as simple as entity selection, simple is not the right word, but down to like where you're setting reasonable comp, retirement contributions, all sorts of different things you can do, Augusta rule, visualizing all those savings in one place. Because your tax advisory work, gang, it ought to be the best paying work in your tax firm. I did this mental exercise on the pod the other day, I think. Say you got a $1,000 a year tax client, and all you do is tax prep for them. If we can get that same client to pay us another $2,000 for tax advisory, so they pay us $3,000 a year, that tax advisory shouldn't be any more work than the tax prep itself. And if we can get clients onto that higher package, let's say we've got the same costs in the advisory work that we do in the tax prep work. Say you're running tax prep at 50% margin. That's $1,000 in costs, $3,000 top line, that's $2,000 profit now. You doubled the amount of work that client is, but we 4x the profit while 2xing the work. So effectively, for time put in, we're making 2x the money. And for every one of those clients you get on that plan, man, you can cut one, or you can go home to bed, take a nap midday, and never go back to work. For tax firms, I genuinely believe like tax advisory is the path to that, to more freedom. CoreV, really helpful way to visualize that stuff. We actually did a demo day on the YouTube channel for them recently, so you can see how it works in like 5 minutes. Learn more about them, check out a link down in the show notes. Interesting. So you're doing the more of the firm brain dump on your peers now? Like you feel like your spouse is off the hook more than they were before?
Yes. So my wife is wonderful and a very patient listener, but we start every CPA related conversation with, do I really need to like listen, or are you just wanting to talk at somebody? And I'm like, I just need somebody to talk at. And now I have like 21, 22 other people I can just talk all these things at. So big relationship boon there. So, but I'd love to tag on to something you had mentioned about focusing on the downside
Hmm.
and the potential downside. I read a study recently that says that people are 3 times more likely to try to avoid a loss
Yeah.
than they are to secure a similar gain. And so it'll hurt me 3 times more to lose $100 than I would feel happy if I gained $100.
Hmm.
And that's just that human propensity to focus on the negative. But it's never actually that bad.
Right.
I mean, my W-2 boss could find this podcast and call me and say, "So you're building an accounting firm." And I'm so convinced because of the experiences I've had in life that it's going to work out one way or the other. I love my W-2 firm. Those people are incredible, which most people can't say about their main gig. But even though it's an incredible firm and I really love the people, I just have this passion where it's like, I want to build something that has my fingerprints, my faults, my good side, my bad side, but I want to build it. And so even if they find this, big deal. I'm fully convinced that it's going to work out one way or the other.
That, and on the pie chart of excuses we come up with to not do a thing, a shockingly big percentage of it is all the people in our past, or past employers, or your mom, or your sister, your spouse, like all these people in your life where you're like, what'll they say if they see it? Like, is that like, it's interesting you brought that one up. Is that one that you have grappled with quite a bit? Like the notion of like, well, what if somebody finds this stuff from me online?
Yeah, so I did have a lot of anxiety about that. And in order to break that anxiety, I did a 30-day crappy video challenge because I knew I needed to put myself out there if I'm going to make this work. And I knew that if anything is worth doing well, then it's worth doing really, really bad at the start. And so I challenged myself because I wanted to get better on video. I knew that I would love to do a podcast, something like this. And so I thought, well, I'll just start practicing. And so every day for 30 days, I just did a really bad video to get kind of familiar with the tools and figure out how it all worked. But then when I started to get videos that were at least okay enough that they could benefit somebody, then the anxiety hit where it's like, well, somebody could find that useful and I probably should post it. But what are they going to think of me? And so I don't know, I think I stared at my computer screen for 20 minutes with the Facebook post and the video attached before I hit send. And my 9-year-old daughter walks in and she's like, "What are you up to, Dad?" And I said, "I'm trying to decide whether or not to hit that blue button." And I said, "Why don't you do it?" So she walks over and hits it. I'm like, "Well, there, it's already out. There we go." But I was very concerned to put myself out there because what are they going to think of me?
Yeah.
And the reality is they already think whatever they're going to think. I don't want to let that hold me back. If there's anything that I'm afraid to do, then it's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, and honestly, I think there are some of the people that we think would be most critical where we are really concerned about their opinion. They're not people who will get us to what we want to be. Oftentimes, there are people who are trying to hold us back to maybe what we were. And to let someone else dictate what you can't be, like that's just a recipe for, I don't know, like giving up control, not feeling like you have agency, letting other people get into your head like way too much. I know that was something I struggled with earlier on. Do you feel like it's gotten easier as you've been publishing a few things now?
Yeah. So whether it's gotten easier or I've just begun to care less, I don't know. But one way or the other, I don't have that anxiety, that trepidation about what are they going to think of me. And you know what? I think part of it is I now have a group of 22 people who are just as nervous as I am. And we're talking each other through issues, concerns. One of the guys, in our Discord, I started a challenges channel where anybody who wants to can post their own personal challenge for the month. This is what I'm going to do. And putting that out into the world, especially with people who you've given the authority to hold you accountable to your own goals. Putting that out there, it raises the bar.
Yeah.
And so one of the guys in the group, he said, "Okay, I'm going to record one video and post it in the month of August." And I told him, I said, why not just do 4?
Yeah.
Don't have to post them. But instead of 1, why not do 4? And now he's on a roll. He's making videos and he's figuring it out. And it's because he was kind of pushed in that challenges group to overcome. And so we're all kind of pushing each other forward.
That's super cool. And it's like there's an element of that adjacency to other people that have the same momentum towards what you're trying to get to. Like I think we actually hit on something really that is a really big deal there for people. That is, your fear of trying to get to that next thing oftentimes is dictated by the environment that you're in, and not wanting to be in conflict to that, and being like, my wife's in the next room. What is she going to say if I'm sitting here talking to myself recording a video? Like, isn't that going to be weird? And that's very...
I had that exact conversation
Yeah.
with my wife. I said, she's bought into the same goal and direction that I'm wanting to go. And so I know she's going to be the most supportive, but just knowing she's on the other side of the wall, I'm like, man, how do I say that with the level of conviction that I feel when I know that somebody else is just over there listening?
And that's like the most innocent version of that. There is like the insidious version that is the last person you worked with, or your last boss, or something like that, where you're like, they had you in an environment, in an ecosystem that did not encourage you to go out and do that next thing. And if you had said within that group you were going to do that, they'd be like, you're nuts. Like, why would you do that? But then you come over to another group who's all made the same decision that you have, and you're trading the energy, all of the people who maybe want you to stay the same. You're trading that energy with a bunch of other people who are like, yeah, I left that group too. And here's a different group that like all has energy going in the same direction. Like that is like such a fun, like energizing thing. Like I just love that.
Yeah. An example, so something that comes to mind, during COVID, live sporting events, there was no audience. And so there was such a lack of energy, and you could watch the performance of the athletes and it just wasn't the same. You fast forward or rewind when there's a full stadium and it's electric because everybody's here to cheer on that thing that's in front of them.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about leaving that other place where there's just the energy is actually negative, and then suddenly jumping into a group where everybody's cheering for the same thing, you're absolutely right. It's incredible. It's transformational.
Well, that's super cool. I hope folks hear this and maybe have a little more courage to step out and do that different thing. Obviously, accounting communities hold a very like special spot in my heart because that was kind of how my entrepreneurship here started. And that community was capped at 500 members, and we've long since hit that, like for a reason, because I think rather than like me trying to grow a community to be massive, I want there to be a whole ton of Justins out there who are like making that very specific version that's more contextual to say like, here is our experience right now and the type of support that we need. And the more like specific and nuanced that get, I think the more powerful it is to be surrounded by those folks. So good for you. We'll have a link to the community. It's not just for anyone. Like that specificity is really good. Like it is for side hustlers.
Yeah.
And then we'll link the podcast as well. Any other parting thoughts, things you want folks to hear? Like the thing that maybe you needed to hear 6 months ago or 12 months ago?
Yeah, even 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I've realized that 90% of getting what I want out of my life is just having the courage to show up. Everything after that can be figured out. There's not an accounting problem. There's not a business or a sales problem that can't be figured out. Just have the courage to jump in and get over your head.
Love it. Good for you, man. Justin, thanks for coming on. This was super fun. And we'll see you in the comments, right?
Absolutely. I'll be there, not lurking.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
Hey, thanks so much.